Welcome to the Essential Self-Care Podcast, a show for those of us who are, let's face it, too busy for self-care. I'm your host, Dr. Sheetal Ajmani, a physician turned speaker, coach, and consultant. As the founder of Radiant Living Institute, I help women, leaders, and executives navigate personal and professional challenges with clarity, confidence, and self-compassion. I also work with leadership teams and organizations to optimize their performance and impact. In this show, you will hear real-world experiences and expert insights to help you cultivate a kinder, more compassionate relationship with yourself so that you can show up as your best self, whether in your career, community, or personal relationships. Please note that this show is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. Always consult your own healthcare provider about your specific situation. Now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Essential Self-Care Podcast. I am excited today to welcome Stephanie Vatalaro to the show. Stephanie is the founder and principal consultant of WaveMaker Strategies, LLC, where she draws on nearly 2 decades of boating and fishing industry leadership to help brands, organizations, and executives chart a smarter, more strategic path forward. Stephanie is also an award-winning marketing and communications leader with experience across corporate, agency, nonprofit, and newsroom events. Stephanie has dedicated her career to expanding participation in fishing and boating and strengthening conservation of the nation's aquatic resources. Today, Stephanie is going to share a bit of her personal self-care journey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here and to introduce you to our listeners. So for our listeners, Stephanie and I actually met last fall of 2025, at a Vistage meeting just outside of DC. Vistage, if you're not familiar, is a global executive coaching organization with locally led peer advisory groups, of which Stephanie is a member and I am on their speakers bureau. So I was invited to speak with the group, and that's how I had the pleasure of meeting Stephanie. At that time, you had just very recently experienced a pretty major, unexpected career and life transition. And you had shared with me at that time about how that experience led you to explore activities that you wouldn't have otherwise and discover new things about yourself. And it basically sent you on this self-care, self-awareness, reflection journey. And so I'm excited to dive deeper into that today. So as we get started, first, can you set the stage for our listeners by telling us a little bit about what was going on at that time in your life? What was that major transition?
Sure. In 2025, I think, this is going to be a familiar story to a lot of people. I was working for a government-funded nonprofit organization. I had been there almost 20 years. And with everything going on in the political environment, we had our funding terminated. So I was in a what I felt like was a career position where I was going to work out the rest of my days. And I had it just taken away, just like that. It was gut-wrenching. It was heartbreaking. It challenged my identity. Like, who am I? It really forced me to take stock and take the time to not only take care of myself, but figure out, what do I want to do next, now that it's not this like foregone conclusion.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you share that. When situations like this occur, it can really, like you said, you described a lot of the emotions, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking, and at the same time, it can really make us re-examine, and question our sense of identity and who we are and sort of what's meant for us. And like you said, that's exactly what it made you, kind of forced you to take stock of. So what did that journey look like for you in those early days? I'm curious, those sort of first few days to weeks, what did that journey look like for you?
Messy. It's interesting, as operations wound down, I was so caught up in the day-to-day of it and the people part of it. We had to let a lot of people go, that I had a hard time taking care of myself. I was very emotionally distraught. But I knew that when it ended and when I had to walk away, I knew that it wouldn't do me any good to just sit around and wallow in it, right? I needed to do things that filled me up, that filled my cup, made me feel good, gave me purpose. And I knew that I wanted to take a break from work. Given this was such a big, long, almost 20-year commitment, take some time just to really process what just happened and explore what's next. So the first week, the first thing I did actually, I had my last day at work, and then I went on a girls' weekend trip to the Eastern Shore of Maryland, which was super fun. You know, I had never done that before, and just sat around and talked and enjoyed local food and beverage, and that was really nice. But I think also, you know, I know exercise for me is super important, and being outdoors to my mental health. And so I pretty early on, I dedicated myself to, okay, I'm not just going to sit around. I'm going to take a daily walk, like a meaningful walk, at least a couple of thousand, 3,000 steps. And I made myself accountable by posting it on Instagram. So people came to expect now, oh, where's your daily walk today? So really it was around connecting with people, getting outside, enjoying nature, and doing exercise. That's sort of the primary thing I threw myself into.
Thank you for sharing that. And particularly, thank you for sharing that in those early days, it was messy. Part of
What?
what this show is about, and part of my intention with this show, is that we have these real conversations with one another. And so many of us can go through experiences in our lives and transitions, especially these major transitions where life just feels really messy. And to know that we're not alone in that it's so valuable. It's so, so valuable. So thank you for sharing that. And it sounds like in those early days, as you were wrapping up in that position, you were sort of more worried about kind of wrapping it up in sort of a neat way of making sure that all the people involved were taken care of. So kind of this focus on what came to mind for me was almost like crisis management. This unexpected change came about very rapidly to your organization. And so really focused on the day to day of that. And it sounds like after that, you very early on had approached the situation with already a lot of self-awareness of knowing that one, you wanted to take an intentional break. It sounds like you had the awareness already that you wanted to be very intentional with that. And to do so, that you needed to, one, take time to process the situation, and two, also do things that filled you up and filled your cup. And part of that also that I'm hearing for you related to taking action. When you describe, you right away had planned this girls' trip to the Eastern Shore, you pretty soon realized exercise and being outdoors is really important to you. You set up an accountability plan by posting your daily walks on Instagram. To me, that says that this like taking action part was also important to you.
I know from previous experience that I can't sit around and be a victim of the circumstance. I need to do things intentionally to support myself, lift myself up in those kind of darker times.
Yeah. Yeah. And taking action is such a great way, I feel also. For me, I know when I'm going through different situations, if I just, and obviously different situations than what you're describing right now, but just if I'm feeling in a rut or if I'm feeling stuck or if I'm feeling kind of caught up in my head about anything, taking action is like the quickest way to get out of that, whether that's taking action on working on something for my business or getting outside and going for a walk or going to the gym. So I'm curious, that's where it started. It started with emphasizing this connection with people, specifically initially with friends. It started with prioritizing exercise and being outdoors. What did prioritizing those key elements during those early stages, what impact did that have on you and on what came next for you?
It had a positive impact because it gave me something to look forward to. I did some other travel as well. I went to see my parents. I traveled with my sister and my niece. It was really fun. So planning happy hours and planning lunches with people gave me things to look forward to. Being outdoors, it's always just been super grounding for me and relaxing. And it was, at the time of year was like August, September. So the weather was beautiful and I could enjoy all of the, flowers and plants and walking by the water, which I love. And as I started to decompress a little bit and have more time on my hands, I realized, okay, I need some kind of schedule because I don't want to just like flap in the breeze here too long without any real purpose. So I started doing some things that I never really had a chance to do before because I worked a very busy corporate job. I traveled a lot. One of those being cooking. In my family, my husband does all the cooking, has for years and years and years. And I was like, I would like to cook. I have time. I'm around. I can go to the store. And it was a little touch and go. All my recipes weren't amazing at the start, but it was fun and rewarding. And even now, still, I don't cook all the time, but I try to at least cook one meal a week. I also took the opportunity to do some volunteer work with my child's school. When he was little, I didn't have that opportunity. I was in such a busy job. I was the parent who would say to the PTA, like, just take my money. Like, I don't have time to volunteer, but here's my money. And I was like, I have time now. And they actually needed help from someone who had marketing experience. And I was like, perfect. So I've been working with the theater boosters on their website and doing flyers and ticket sales and stuff like that. It's been really fun.
That's so much fun. That's so much fun. I love hearing that. And, as you were about to go into kind of talking about cooking, volunteering at the school theater, one question that had come to mind was like, did that, and you were describing like you knew that you wanted some sort of a schedule. What I was thinking was like, did any of that space feel uncomfortable to you in moments? I know for many of my clients, I know for me as well, just kind of used to and enjoying doing. I enjoy planning, enjoy doing. Many of my clients are much the same way. And sometimes having that empty space, especially if it's new and different, can feel a little bit unsettling or uncomfortable. I was wondering if you experienced any of that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there was a time frame when I was putting all this together. I had these intentions, but I would find myself just sitting around like, what do I do now? Like, for sure, it was uncomfortable. And I had to really brainstorm and think like, what can I be doing? What should I be doing? Even when I got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm done vacationing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I did kind of set a schedule at that point where I would get up, have my coffee in the morning, take my child to school, come home and dedicate 2 hours in the morning to looking for jobs or working on my resume, something, looking for employment. And then another hour in the afternoon. And that gave me, I think, a sense of purpose and some focus so that I wasn't just like laying around saying, what do I do with myself?
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. And I think you drew a very important distinction there as well. You know, right when that position ended for you, you knew that you wanted to take some time off. You knew you wanted time to process. You knew you wanted to do things that filled you up. You planned a girls' trip. You planned trips with your family. And like you said, kind of this distinction between vacation time and having space in this other way in your schedule. That it's not vacation time. It's needing some structure. It's needing some schedule for that, needing some routine, needing to fill yourself up with a sense of purpose in a time that is filled with a lot of uncertainty. I also enjoy that you shared that you started exploring and experimenting with cooking and you found it to be fun, whether your recipes worked out the way you wanted them to or not. The key point was that it felt fun for you. And that even now, you still make it a point to cook at least one meal a day. And one thing that I always share in my work with clients, and I believe I shared this at the meeting that I met you at as well, is that small changes make a large impact. So it doesn't have to be every day or every meal, but if, ensuring sort of one meal a week, I'm sorry, is you're kind of getting your hands dirty and getting in it. And that's sort of continuing to maintain feeding that sense of joy for you. I think that's absolutely wonderful. So since that time, you have now started your own business. I mentioned this during your introduction, WaveMaker Strategies, where you do provide consulting services. How did that birth from this experience?
It wasn't planned, I'll tell you that much. I came away from my job thinking, okay, I'm going to find another full-time job. Let's do this. And I went all in for a couple of months. That's all I was doing, was sending resumes, cover letters, and the job market is really tough right now. And particularly, I think, in the DC area where so many federal workers have been laid off. So at some point, after going through that exercise and not getting a lot of, great feedback there, or any feedback really, I had a couple of contacts of mine reach out to me and say, "Hey, are you doing any consulting work?" And I thought, I wasn't planning to, but what the heck? It'll help me do something, stay productive, and learn. So in November, I launched my LLC, November of 25, and it took a little while to get ramped up, but I got my first two clients in March of 26. Actually, signed agreement, doing work. And I haven't completely replaced my income, but I'm finding it to be an interesting journey, and it's filling me up in some ways and not others. But so far, so good.
Yeah. Congratulations on
Thank
those
you.
signing those contracts with those two clients in March. It's something a lot of people don't talk about often. I try to be fairly transparent with that here on the show, of just the ups and downs of business, of running your own business, of starting it. Each step, celebrating each step, getting that LLC, signing your first client, even sending out the first proposal, whether that client signs or not, even that, it's each step is a really big deal and something to celebrate. And it can be easy to lose sight or look over some of those things sometimes when you're in the trenches of it, as we both are as solo business owners. And often there's much that we plan for, and there's also much that happens that we didn't necessarily plan for. And so with that, with sort of now the ups and downs of being a relatively new business owner, what does self-care look like for you now? You mentioned that you're still cooking a meal once a week. What else does self-care look like for you now?
Yeah, it's a lot of the same, honestly. It's just a little more structured now. The daily walk continues, getting some cardio exercise and weight training. I try to do at least once a week of each. I try to each week have some kind of social activity to look forward to, whether that's meeting up for lunch with a girlfriend or as a family getting together with people. Those are the kind of things that support me the best, I think. Oh, and always having some kind of travel or trip in the distance to look forward to.
So, a couple of sort of key elements, and another reason I love doing this show is introducing our listeners to a wide variety of practices and tools and modalities that can support their self-care, because it really does look different for each of us. We each have different things in our life that light us up, that feed us, that give us joy, that fill our cup. And that can also look different during different seasons of our life. It sounds like some tried and true principles of part of your, I'll call it self-care blueprint, are, I jotted this down on my notes: connection with yourself, with others, and with nature. And then along with that and in that is physical activity and travel. But one thing, I had written was this connection with self, others, and nature as being a big, big key element and anchor for you, it sounds like.
It is, and it's interesting because I've been fortunate to have access to really great mental health resources in my life, and so I mean, you nailed it. Those are the things that light me up. But what's interesting is that they weren't always inherent to me. For example, the social piece. It used to be when I got really anxious or stressed out about something, I would shy away from planning dinners, planning social time, because I thought I needed to isolate and bring things down and be quiet. But what I've learned about myself is that that social connection can actually really help when I'm anxious about something. It gives me an outlet, it gives me a person to connect with and get feedback. So I learned to lean into that rather than avoid it. But of course, it's all individual, right?
Yeah, exactly. It is individual. And at the same time, that's such an important point as well. I find for myself, I tend to be interestingly and perhaps a bit ironically that I'm doing this podcast, but I tend to be a rather private person. And actually, it's not ironic at all. I think that's part of what this podcast means to me on my own personal journey. But I tend to be a very private person. And so I've found that also when I'm feeling stressed or worried or anxious about something, when I do open up to others, it's just I find that I'm not the only one thinking this or going through this, and that in
Absolutely.
itself can be so helpful, so healing in processing situations and just moving you forward. I have a friend who we go for a morning walk once a week, and we've been doing this for over 2 years now, and
Nice.
it's just so wonderful. Sometimes we'll both come into the conversation or to that walk feeling anxious or stressed about something, and by the end we're laughing, or by the middle of the walk we're laughing, and it's just so wonderful. So that connection piece can be really valuable. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners, what would that be?
This is cheesy, but it's so, so true. And I think of it all the time. When I became a parent, this was super important. When I was going through this crazy work transition last year, this was important. It's the whole when you're on the plane, you're getting on the plane and they say put the oxygen mask on yourself before assisting others. You must take care of yourself before you can help others. And if you could just keep that top of mind, whether it's connection, whether it's time in nature, whatever works for you, like you need that to feed your soul so you can be your best self and then try to help others or support others.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a wonderful note to wrap up today's episode with. Thank you so much for being on the show, sharing a bit of your journey, sharing a bit of the tools and strategies and modalities that helped you along the way. For anyone who's listening, where can they learn more about you and the work that you're doing?
Well, my new consulting website is wavemakerstrategies.com. So you can find me there. You can find me on LinkedIn to learn more about what I do professionally.
Wonderful. I will include the link in the show notes below. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's a wrap. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and write a quick positive review wherever you're tuning in, on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. Your reviews really do help the show reach more people who need it. And as a free gift, don't forget to download your Radiant Living Starter Guide at radiantlivinginstitute.com.